This video is about explaining what might motivate a philosopher to reject a utilitarian theory, in particular a preference-based utilitarian theory, and move towards a rights-based theory. What's the basic idea that makes you think a right is a better way to achieve the right, get a guide to right action, as opposed to simply trying to maximize the satisfaction of preferences? Well, first, recall what a utilitarian is trying to do. They recommend that, in general, you should try to maximize utility. So they look at everyone, and anyone whose utility could be raised without harming other people, go ahead and raise it. And wouldn't that be a good thing to do? And if you think about all the nice things that you could in fact do in your life, things that won't cost you much or anything, but that would make others better off, it does seem a shame if you don't do those things. Well, a utilitarian would agree, would say, you ought to do those things that are going to raise other people's utility. So that looks like a nice idea. It becomes more controversial, however, when we realize that sometimes, in order to raise the utility of some, you have to lower the utility of others. That is, you have to make trade-offs. Let's illustrate with an example. Imagine you are in possession of a strawberry, but it happens that you are completely full. You've stuffed yourself on 3 whole punnets of strawberries. So you wouldn't get any more utility whatsoever from eating this additional strawberry. There is, however, a person in the room, a friend of yours, to whom you could give the strawberry. This person is hungry and would enjoy an additional strawberry. So giving the strawberry to them would increase their utility. And let's suppose the only other option available to you is to bury the strawberry in a hole in the backyard, making it inedible for anyone. And that will affect nobody's utility, so the utility change there is 0. What should you do now? Again, there's no real trade-off here. There's something with utility impact 0 or something that will increase a person's utility. You should give the strawberry to your friend. Obvious. The utilitarian seems to get the common sense view. Now suppose there's a more difficult choice. There are 2 very hungry children. Both would like the strawberry. The child on the left says, "Can it be for me, please?" And the child on the right says, "No, me." To whom do you give it? Giving the strawberry to the child on the right would increase that child's utility, but lower the utility of the child on the left, who would be terribly frustrated and disappointed. You could do it the other way around. You could give the strawberry to the child on the left, increasing their utility, but lowering the utility of the child on the right. I take it the utilitarian would say, we need to check, are there preferences of the same intensity? Would we get more utility in total by giving the strawberry to the child on the right or on the left? Even here, it might seem like a fairly manageable trade-off, though, because as far as I've said, neither child has really a claim to the strawberry. It doesn't feel like we're taking something away from one child that they are entitled to. And when we use this language of claims and entitlements, it seems that what's in the background is some sort of notion of having a right. These issues become very much more vivid when we think about actions that are going to harm one person in order to benefit another, or at the most extreme, to kill one person in order to save lives of one or many others. And a natural thought is, the reason why these ideas get so controversial is because people have a right not to be harmed and a right not to be killed. Let me now give you a fairly extreme thought experiment that's supposed to bring out the idea that a utilitarian will sometimes recommend harming some in order to benefit others, even in the most horrific ways, provided the benefit to others is great enough, and that the natural remedy to this sort of disturbing upshot, if you find it disturbing, is to think that no, maybe people have something like rights. So the example I'm going to use is known as transplant. There are plenty of others, though, that we could use to illustrate this. In fact, I would encourage you, if you think of almost any case whereby somehow by killing one person you can save others, even if it's many others, you would typically come to the common sense view would be that no, that would be impermissible. So this is just one example of that general pattern. But here's the transplant case. Suppose that you are some sort of highly successful, very skilled transplant surgeon, and you have 5 patients who are in need of transplant organs in order to save their lives. If you perform a transplant on them, they'll live very healthy, happy, and long lives because of your excellent ability as a surgeon. You have, however, a shortage of available organs from people who have died recently. You do have, however, one relatively healthy patient. Maybe they're in just for some minor cosmetic procedure. And this patient has the exact right blood type for all 5 patients and has the 5 different organs that the 5 patients need in order to save their lives. So you could, by pretending to make some sort of error in the surgery, bring about the death of this patient. The rest of the people in the operating theatre would think that it was just an unfortunate accident. But once they died, you would be able to take their organs and provide them to the other 5 patients, saving their lives. So, without anyone else knowing, the surgeon could kill 1 person and save 5 lives. And the 5 lives saved would be of similar quality as the life that is lost. The question is, what would a utilitarian make of this proposal? And let's focus on a preference utilitarian in particular. Will the surgeon maximize utility by proceeding? Well, you've got to consider both actions and consider all of the affected preferences in both cases. So, if the surgeon proceeds, we're going to suppose that all 5 patients would prefer to live. And so the 5 who are saved, their preference is satisfied if the surgeon proceeds, whereas it would be frustrated if the surgeon does not proceed. And the one healthy patient who will be killed, this person would prefer to live, so their preference is frustrated if the surgeon proceeds and would be satisfied if the surgeon does not proceed. But we need to take into account the sheer quantity and intensity of preferences here. Arguably, since these are similar lives and people who care about their lives similarly, you have 5 pluses on the left and relative to 5 minuses on the right, and so it becomes pretty clear in total that the surgeon proceeding is going to be the utility maximizing action overall. Now, just a small aside about this example. What I've done here is a little oversimple. I haven't actually taken into account all of the relevant preferences. But for now, I don't want to get too into the details of the way you can change the example to address that concern, because it is true that a preference utilitarian would have to worry about preferences that are frustrated in this if the surgeon proceeds, even if nobody knows that their preferences are being frustrated. But put aside that concern for now. Elsewhere we can discuss some examples that might overcome that particular complication. It does look like it's going to be possible to come up with cases like this where what looks like an abhorrent, shocking action, the surgeon chopping up an innocent patient to save others, will come out as recommended by the utilitarian. And this prompts people to think, well, what's gone wrong? What is being overlooked in the utilitarian analysis? And this is the sort of anti-utilitarian idea I want to suggest to you is a natural conclusion to draw from this. The idea is that some particular preferences shouldn't really be added up in this general fashion so that we try to weigh some against others. We shouldn't allow trade-offs involving some preferences. Just some in particular seem particularly important. In particular, your preference not to be killed, right? Or not to be harmed. Or maybe to hold on to the property that you already possess. Preferences like these might be so important that they shouldn't be subject to a straightforward trading off. Here's a nice way to try and bring out the contrast then. For a preference utilitarian, your preference is like a vote. And every preference is like this. Not just one, but every single preference is like a vote. And votes, of course, they count, but they can be outweighed. A rights-based theorist thinks that some preferences, these ones that are extra special, they don't merely count as preferences to be aggregated and weighed up and traded off. They are rights or entitlements or claims. And special preferences of that sort are not like a vote, they're more akin to a veto. That is, a single person can say, no, you cannot go ahead with that action or that policy. Why? It would infringe my rights. Yes, it might do a lot of good for other people, but it would sacrifice one of my extra special preferences, one of these ones that has the status of a right. And you can see how that's akin to having a veto power. One person can pull down the whole proposal.